Yo, what is up guys? Delboy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hopefully you guys are doing well. If you're new here, smash that like, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. So this weekend of course we have the big Trilogy fight between Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder. Of course these two guys first met back in December 2018 in what was a very exciting but controversial fight. Most people, including myself, felt Tyson Fury won, but ultimately the fight was scored as a draw. Of course in that fight Tyson Fury got dropped twice, once in the 9th round and heavily in the 12th round. But regardless of how you scored the first fight, I think it warranted a rematch, and we got that in February 2020, and that fight was completely different to the first. Tyson Fury switched up tactics. He bullied the bully, he pushed Deontay Wilder back, and essentially he beat Deontay Wilder down for 7 rounds until his corner threw in the towel. So naturally, after the second fight, not too many people are giving Deontay Wilder much of a chance in this third fight. Me personally, my official prediction video is up. I have picked Tyson Fury, but the question is, can Deontay Wilder win this fight? Are people being too dismissive of the threat in which he poses to Tyson Fury? And really that's what we're going to be discussing today. And really I just wanted to discuss some variables which could give, Deontay Wilder somewhat of a chance in this fight. Obviously watching the first 2 fights, watching both guys throughout their careers, it's obvious that Tyson Fury is the more naturally gifted boxer, technically superior, more fundamentally sound. He's also the bigger, taller, longer man, and based on that second fight, I would say Tyson Fury also has a physical strength advantage. So Fury goes into this fight with the advantages, and obviously he should win this fight based on both guys' skill set. And again, I have to reiterate, I am picking Tyson Fury for this fight, but does Deontay Wilder have any hope in this fight? Let's talk about Tyson Fury for a start. The build-up to this fight for Tyson Fury, has it really been ideal? I would say maybe not, maybe not. Obviously this fight was supposed to happen originally on the 24th of July, but it got postponed due to Tyson Fury coming down with Rona, allegedly. And if that is the case, if that was true, then surely that would have affected the flow of Tyson Fury's training camp. It would have broken it up a little bit, and, potentially that's not ideal. Obviously, Tyson Fury pulled out relatively close to when this third fight was supposed to happen. And again, he was coming to that point in time in camp where he would be peaking in camp, reaching his optimum performance. But when that sort of thing happens, when you pull out injured or you get a virus, whatever, you're going to have to taper down and then rebuild back up to peak again. Sometimes that isn't ideal going into a fight of this magnitude. Also, of course, Tyson Fury, it's well documented, has had some personal problems going into this third fight. And, during the build-up to this fight, Tyson Fury had a new baby daughter, and when she was born, she wasn't in good health, and according to various reports, it was quite serious. Again, I don't care who you are, that's the sort of thing that will affect your mental state in camp. It may take time out of your camp also. These sort of things are not ideal going into this sort of fight. So there has been a few disruptions going into this third fight for Tyson Fury, and potentially that could be a problem. Obviously Deontay Wilder also had to deal with the third fight being postponed, but ultimately he could just train right through it, and it gives him more time to hone his skills and come up with a game plan to somehow knock out Tyson Fury. Also, we have to take into account the amount of time both guys have been out of the ring. Both guys, of course, last fought February of 2020, and that was the last time they fought, so they've been out of the ring for the same time, but who does that affect more? Well, given the sort of beating that Deontay Wilder received first time around, I honestly believed at the time an instant rematch would be the worst thing for Deontay Wilder. Originally, pre-COVID, the third fight was supposed to happen summer of 2020, like July 2020, and if that did happen at the time, I was thinking to myself, it's going to be the same thing again. Wilder's got nowhere near enough time to recover mentally, physically and spiritually, as well as coming up with a game plan, but what are we now, 18 months since that second fight. Wilder's had more than enough time to, add new people to his team, come up with a strategy, recover from that second fight, recover physically, mentally, and go into this third fight rejuvenated with, confidence. Again, if this third fight happened back in July 2020, I don't think that would have been enough time for Wilder to recover. But he's had enough time now. I know he's not fought in between, and that's always a problem, but neither has Tyson Fury. And that's another thing. In terms of their style, their skill set, who does the inactivity affect more? Well, again, you could say Tyson Fury. I've heard quite a few people in boxing kind of theorise that inactivity tends to affect rhythm fighters more so than someone like Deontay Wilder per se. Fury's a guy who likes to feint, who likes to level change, who fights across various different distances, and his control of distance and range is very good at heavyweight. And I would say outside of Usyk, Tyson Fury is the best rhythm fighter in the heavyweight division. So this inactivity, could it affect Tyson Fury's style going into this bout? Wilder's never going to be a fancy Dan. He's never going to be a guy who's throwing feints and drawing the lead and, necessarily being great at distance control. Ultimately, his goal is purely to land that big right hand and knock out Tyson Fury, whereas Tyson Fury's style is much more complex. There's a lot more nuts and bolts that need to be oiled, and being outside the ring so long, I'm not really sure that is necessarily good for a guy like Tyson Fury. But on the flip side, Tyson Fury has had long stretches of inactivity previously. But the key point here is he's not had a long stretch of inactivity going into a fight of this magnitude. So that is something to definitely consider going into this third fight. Obviously, you have other things as well, like Deontay Wilder changing his training setup. I mean, I'm not really sure how much effect that will have on Deontay Wilder, to tell you the truth. Even if he goes in there and tries a few things different and it doesn't work, I do believe Deontay Wilder will refer to type. But you never know, having a fresh pair of eyes in camp may be beneficial for Deontay Wilder. Maybe Malik Scott has taught him a few new tricks, some different ways to land that right hand, some different ways to set up the right hand. And yeah, despite Wilder being a one-trick pony with that right hand, if he's found ways to disguise that trick and finding different ways to set it up, he could be more dangerous going into this third fight. So the training situation of Wilder, I'm not really convinced, to be honest. I have to wait and see it, but at the same time, I'm not necessarily writing it off as being a factor in this fight. When I look at some of the pad work in regards to Deontay Wilder and Malik Scott, I do like some of the things that they were showing us. I wasn't a big fan of the bodywork from Deontay Wilder on the pads. I felt he looked extremely clunky, extremely wide when he was throwing punches, and extremely awkward. I'm not sure that's going to work against Tyson Fury, to be honest, but I liked some of the things he was doing with his lead hands. He was doing lead hand drills in pad work. I liked how he was varying the jab on the pad work, varying it from body to head, feinting the jab and then throwing the right hand, keeping his head off centre line when throwing the jab, and also implementing the left hook to the head in that pad work. I liked some of the drills in which I was seeing from Wilder and Scott, but again, whether he can replicate that in the ring is a completely different story. But ultimately, it can't hurt to try new things out, right? It can't hurt. I mean, if it doesn't work, we know what's going to happen with Wilder. He's going to do what he always does. So it's worth a go. It's worth a try. Why not? But ultimately, as I'm sure you've guessed from the tone of this video, the chances I give Deontay Wilder in this fight is if buts and maybes. And essentially, Deontay Wilder needs the stars to align. He's got a puncher's chance. As we know, he hits very hard. If he connects on Tyson Fury, of course he can knock him out. We've seen him drop him twice. Deontay could definitely knock out Tyson Fury, but the chances to do that are going to be quite slim, to land a clean right hand. And when that prevails, when that opportunity arises, he needs to take it. If he doesn't, he's going to get beat again. But ultimately, I'll put it like this. How many times or how many chances do you want to give Deontay Wilder to knock you out? If he was playing Russian roulette a 6-shooter revolver, you give it a spin, you point the gun to your head, you pull the trigger and you hear a click, you're not going to then spin it again and pull the trigger again, are you? No. And, you know, Tyson Fury definitely runs that risk going into this third fight. Again, how many chances do you want to give Deontay Wilder to knock you out? I mean, again, I'll put it to you like this. Let's say Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury fought 10 times. A fully fit Deontay Wilder, a fully fit Tyson Fury. I would back Tyson Fury to win the majority of those fights. But would I back Tyson Fury to win all 10 without getting caught at least a couple of times in 10 fights? Probably not. I wouldn't bet any money on it anyway. But yeah, obviously Deontay Wilder does have a puncher's chance going into this fight. And ultimately that is what makes Deontay Wilder fights intriguing. Is Deontay Wilder a technically flawed fighter? Absolutely. Are his fanboys some of the most annoying and toxic in the sport? Absolutely. Is Deontay Wilder a toxic, low IQ clown? Absolutely. But despite all of that, his power alone, to me, makes his fights intriguing. Even when he's in there with somebody with superior skills, superior experience, you know, bigger, stronger, taller, longer. Despite all of that, I will always find, you know, Deontay Wilder fights somewhat intriguing because of that power. And, you know, going into this third fight, of course he's got a puncher's chance, but, you know, it's finding that shot. And I think a lot of it is going to come down to where Tyson Fury is at. Has he trained properly? Has he had a good camp? Is he fit? Is he fully focused? Has Joshua losing kind of, you know, negatively impacted his motivation? Obviously that Joshua fight, if Fury won this fight and Joshua won his, they would have been in line to earn maybe $100 million each. Now that fight is further away, has that dented Tyson Fury's motivation going into this bout? Who knows? And one thing I will say for Deontay Wilder, now we was talking about Anthony Joshua's mentality and potential confidence issues previously after he fought Usyk. In fact, I was talking about that after the first Ruiz fight. You know, even post-fight for Ruiz 2 and Pulev, I was questioning whether Anthony Joshua was fully over that Andy Ruiz fight, that knockout loss. One thing I'll say for Deontay Wilder, I think the guy is so delusional that he is genuinely going into this third fight with belief that he will win and knock Tyson Fury out cold. Deontay Wilder is low IQ. I'm not being funny, I'm not being cruel, but he's not going to overthink this, in my opinion. He's going to go in there, do what he does, and hope to land a big shot. His game plan, his style, is not really going to change all that much. He might add a couple of bits here and there, but nothing too crazy. I don't believe, despite how bad that second fight was for him, I honestly don't believe he's going to go into this fight scared or overawed. I think he's going to go into this fight with delusional belief. But even if that belief is delusional, it's better than going into a fight not being confident. I will say that much. So yeah, I mean, interesting. I'm looking forward to it. I have to say, you know, I still see a lot of people being negative about this third fight, and I understand why, don't get me wrong. But, you know, the closer it's got, and now we're on fight week, I'm looking forward to this fight. I'm looking forward to the undercard. I don't really have a dog in the race. I don't like either guy. You guys know that. So all I'm hoping for is a good fight, hopefully a conclusive finish, and the best man wins. But we shall see. We shall see. Anyway, share your thoughts below. It's been your guy Delboy. Peace.